Well, hello, hello, hello. Let me make sure that the audio is good before we get started. Welcome, everybody, one and all. All right, so it looks like that's good. See if we got anybody in chat. So far, well, hello, hello, hello. Let me make sure that the audio is good. I wanted to make sure the audio is good before we get started. Gonna give it about a couple more minutes, let people get themselves in here as we prepare to do a rush of content for you guys here today. And we're just going to be playing catch up, and we have the second preseason game on the horizon tomorrow versus the Seahawks. So we're going to talk about where we're at right now, how I feel like the team is doing, just overall player stuff. And also, while I was on vacation, we came to find out that Zack Martin and the Cowboys came to an agreement on a new contract. And so we'll talk about that as well to get fully caught up. Again, we'll get started just momentarily. I don't expect, given the timing of when I go live here, because this works best for me, there probably won't be a whole lot of people watching, but that's okay. If you're watching on the replay, please make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and hit the notification bell as well. So I'll give it about 2 more minutes, and then we'll get fully into what happened throughout the week. From what I understand, that is a serious point of note. And then while I'm doing that, I'm just recapping and taking a look at the box score and some other notes from the Jacksonville game that I wanted to talk about, because there were a couple interesting things that I think people should take away from that first game. And it's not like, oh, this particular, it will be a couple bit of, this particular player here and there. But trust me, we have some interesting storylines going into the next preseason game as we get closer. So again, I thank you guys so much for tuning in and all that other stuff. Let me just double check. Okay. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started. Let's, just talk about the first preseason game. So the Dallas Cowboys took on the Jacksonville Jaguars in their first preseason game. And there was a lot of good things to take away from that preseason game. The first thing was, it was our first look into how the offense was going to be managed by Mike McCarthy and Brian Schottenheimer. And you really saw Cooper Rush be somewhat effective, and Will Grier, aside from the rough start, he settled in and he did his thing. Both QBs did a decent job for what we were looking for, and it allowed us to really evaluate the team properly, because in years past, we wouldn't, be able to look at certain players on offense because the QBs were not playing well, or the offense was being managed a certain way to where we didn't have a whole lot of tape to go off of. But that's the first thing I noticed. The second thing is the running backs, and it's clear as day that Deuce Vaughn, I think, has solidified himself as running back too. And I think that's a fair assessment, to say the least. I feel like, going back at it now, if Deuce Vaughn was a little bit taller, he probably would have gone in the second, third round. Some people say, oh, you might go in the first round. But that being said, I think the Cowboys might have found a steal in Deuce Vaughn. I know it's one game, but he was very effective. 8 carries, 50 yards, 6.3 yards per carry. He did score a touchdown. And there were really 2 carries where he could have house called them, but he either got tripped up or, he just had one guy to, beat, and then that would have been it. So I think what's interesting about this particular situation is that Deuce Vaughn was in a precarious situation, to say the least. And I had a video like, okay, is he even going to make the team? And people are kind of trying to go back and say, oh, everyone that thought that Deuce Vaughn that wasn't going to make the team, they're dumb. And so, but then again, you have to understand, this was before we got any live game footage. And on top of it, this was before Ronald Jones' suspension and then him getting hurt and us getting a chance to see these other guys out there. And so the first big thing is I think Deuce Vaughn has solidified himself as running back too. He has shown that even though he is small, he can get the job done. And I think that that's what we want to see. And also, I think if Deuce Vaughn makes the team, which is now, I think, a certainty at this point, unless something crazy happens, I think that the Cowboys might have a guy that they can lean on going forward, and they don't have to pay Tony Pollard. They could keep a guy like Deuce Vaughn. They can go draft another dude and call it a day. And we'll talk about that as the season goes on. Another guy that I felt like impressed, even though he had the one hiccup, was Rico Dowdle. Rico Dowdle, he definitely looked like one of those guys where he can also push for running back too. And I think that that's going to be your three running backs. I've gone on record. I have said that I believe that Rico Dowdle is a more talented version of Malik Davis. And that's no insult to Malik Davis. I think the benefit to Malik Davis is that he has been available. However, if Rico Dowdle is healthy, he is a better running back than Malik Davis. He has a build that I think the Cowboys would want. And I just think that all things considered, Rico Dowdle is your best pass blocking running back. But the one thing I will say is that that's important. I'm not trying to take anything away from there, but we need to make sure that this running game is solidified first to make it a threat before we get into the whole who's the better pass blocking running back, because a lot of people, and this isn't to take anything away from Zeke, who is now with the Patriots. A lot of times people were saying, okay, you need to have a running back that can pass block, but the problem is that kind of makes you a bit one-dimensional, just my point of view, because you're kind of forcing that one factor of your offense. And looking at it nowadays, I do think that the Cowboys have found their stable of running backs. I don't think that Ronald Jones is needed. If he makes the team, I'm a bit shocked. I'm not saying he can't be a productive player, but I think that the Cowboys have found their trio. And Hunter Lipke, I think that, him being a fullback, I think that he can make the team too. And the thing is that if you decide to go with three running backs and a fullback, you're going to need to make cuts elsewhere. And I think that that's going to move us into our next topic of discussion, which is this receiving game, the passing game, however you wish to refer to it as. So when it comes to the wide receivers, Jalen Tolbert has been unbelievable. I mean, he has made a complete 180. I almost said 360. Yeah. He made a complete 180 with his career. I think that the offense being changed to the West Coast offense, having Mike McCarthy get his hands on that, Brian Schottenheimer help these guys out, remove the option, routes and all that other crap. I think it's helping these guys, because you look at a guy like Jalen Tolbert. I mean, Jalen Tolbert, he caught a touchdown in the way that he's been running the routes, the plays that he's been making. He had one play, I think it was like they called it offensive pass interference, which if anything, it was more defensive pass interference. But he's been making catches, he's been impressing, and it's showing on the football field. It's, again, like if we go back to last preseason, one of the key things that happened there was that, he showed glimpses, but like he couldn't get his feet down right, and it just felt like he was out of pocket. And so, complete change of direction there, and I'm very happy to see that. So, that's the first thing. The second thing, Jake Ferguson, I'm telling you right now, I think that this guy is going to surprise a lot of people. I think a lot of people don't realize that, Jake Ferguson still has not hit his ceiling, but I have said we don't know what that ceiling is, and I think that as long as Jake Ferguson can be a Dalton Schultz caliber tight end, you're set. I think he can be better than Dalton Schultz. He's shown the catches, the vertical threat that we've been waiting for. But that's one thing. I think that one thing that a lot of people aren't talking about, and I might do a video on it tomorrow or later today, is I think Peyton Hendershot might need to watch out. John Stevens Jr. has been a pleasant surprise, and I think that if you've been following first off, if you've been following the channel, I've mentioned his name once or twice before I went on vacation, and if you followed the Twitter Spaces, you know that we've been talking about him. I think that John Stevens Jr., he's a guy that could possibly, push Peyton Hendershot off depending on how the Cowboys view on him. I think that, you have a Luke Schoonmaker who's working his way back from the injury. But a lot of people, and I've had conversations behind the scenes even when I was on vacation, a lot of people need to understand that the Luke Schoonmaker pick was not for both of them. Like, we lost Dalton Schultz, we need a tight end. It was because they didn't know what they have in Peyton Hendershot, and also they don't know if Peyton Hendershot can be the real deal because, he's had issues with the penalties, up and down with his play and production. Again, we're talking about a guy that just came into the league last year, so I'm not trying to be super hard on him, but I'm just letting people understand that it's a tough competition, and John Stevens Jr. could be a guy where we're like, hey, maybe we have someone better than Hendershot here. He's a different mold of tight end compared to the other dudes, but I would really like to see John Stevens Jr. make this team. So if he keeps impressing, he might push someone off. So I would just keep that in mind. Next, we got to talk about the other receivers. Cavante Turpin, Dennis Houston, Simi Fehoko. I think the biggest thing when it comes to those guys, I think that I don't think Simi is a complete loss of hope because to me, we know that what's his name? We know that Jalen Tolbert he's going to make the team. I think that anybody knows that. So we have the three main guys, Lamb, Cooks, Gallup. Tolbert's there. And then it's just like, okay, so who else is making the team, right? So if you're going to hold 6 receivers and Turpin's going to be one of these guys because he's the return specialist, now you have only one spot left. And so it's been a mix of, okay, is it going to be Jalen Brooks? Is it going to be JMC? Is it going to be Simi Fehoko? And I think it could be Simi Fehoko that stays on this roster. I think a lot of people, and I'll put myself in there, are kind of selling Simi short. Now, again, deservedly so because he hasn't been showing much. But, I mean, at this point in time, it's a tough competition at that wide receiver spot. I think we need to get a little bit more film out there before we can make a definitive judgment call. But I would say that right now, it's a pretty big battle at that receiver spot. And there's that. Lobo, what's going on? Deuce is definitely making a case for running back 2. Hopefully he gets some of those first team reps this Saturday. I agree. I would love to see Deuce with the ones. I know that he has been getting work with the ones in the camp, and even going to be going back to Frisco. I know that they're going to try and work him in there. So I'm really excited there. And then the only downside of John Stevens is he can't run block Hendershot, can't catch. That's the thing, Lobo, is that I think that if it depends on what the Cowboys are going for, right? If Luke Schoonmaker is going to be their run blocker, then it doesn't matter what the third tight end is going to do. And I would say this, that if you drafted Luke Schoonmaker to be your run blocking tight end or a guy that can try to do it all, then I would rather have a guy that can catch consistently, right? And that's the problem with Hendershot. I think a lot of us in the offseason felt like, okay, it's going to be Ferg and Henny, and it's going to be those two guys for the foreseeable future. But I don't think a lot of us understand, and again, I'm throwing myself in there because of how things have been going. I don't think Peyton Hendershot is as safe as people think he is. But again, I hope for the best of all these guys. But again, when you have those situations out there, it is what it is. The other thing I have with Cavante Turpin is that he needs to make sure he handles the ball correctly. It does seem like He still has that issue of reading the field and knowing when to go, when not to go, having issues there. But again, it's the first game back. I don't like taking so much weight into it because we don't have much of a sample size. So we'll see how the second game goes. Shout out to Marquise Bell, first off, because he had a bunch of tackles throughout the field, so he was a consistent guy there. But DeMarvion Overshown, we talked about what is this guy going to do? Is he going to be like a Jaron Kearse type of guy? Is he going to be a linebacker? Is he going to go out to safety? That was some of the conversations we were having. But I do think the Cowboys, and I hate to say this because I did say the same thing with Deuce Vaughn, but it's true. DeMarvion Overshown, we're going to need to see a little bit more. I think the Cowboys might have found something with him in that linebacker position. Him and Damone Clark and also the others like Jabril Cox and company. I think the Cowboys might have found their guys at the linebacker position to be good enough to get the job done. And I think, we can't discount Devin Harper because he was doing pretty good. But I do think at the end of the day, I think that DeMarvion Overshown has made his case to be a linebacker in this league, and he does have the flex, and I think that we're seeing Dan Quinn move around a lot, but that's something of note. I think that another thing is that we have to give a shout out to Juan Way Thomas, who got the interception off of Trevor Lawrence and such. I'm just taking a look at a couple other things. Brandon Aubrey, he was 1 for 1 on the field goal attempts, but he did miss an extra point. It does look like the Cowboys are going to go with him as their kicker. He has been doing better in training camp and such, but again, I want to see him get longer snaps at, kicking field goals because that's what I'm more worried about. So there is that. I'm just taking a look at a couple other things, and I think that pretty much does it. I think that also Brian Anger, he's looking fine. I think that we just need another game to get some stuff under our belt. Did you already talk about QB2 comp? I did talk about that, but I will reiterate that here because I think that Cooper Rush is still QB2. And I'm kind of pissed because Dorian Thompson-Robinson, a guy that I was really high on, is now with the Browns, and he's doing great in preseason. I was hoping the Cowboys would draft him as a backup behind Dak Prescott. I'm just kind of mad because I'm like, damn it, like we could have had something there, but that's okay. I think that Will Grier has shown, like, how do I word this? I felt like Will Grier, kind of like the similar conversations between Rico Dowdle and Malik Davis. I think that Will Grier is more talented than Cooper Rush. However, I think Cooper Rush has a better handle on the offense than Will Grier, if that makes any sense. But I still think that when it comes down to it, I think Will definitely showed out for what it was. I think that he wasn't like last year where it was like, okay, it's whatever. I think Cooper Rush, you weren't really asking him to do a whole lot. But again, both of them did pretty well in this preseason game, aside from Will Grier throwing the interception, of course. But again, like, it really felt like once they kind of got settled in, they did their thing. However, I do think that Cooper Rush is still QB2. But I have gone on record and I said I think the Cowboys should have drafted a quarterback to possibly look to replace Cooper Rush. You can get better than Cooper Rush. I felt like if they had drafted DTR, we would be having a different conversation here. And I know how the Cowboys fans base like, oh, we might have got a new start. I don't really give a shit about that. But that does it. I think that we covered the Jaguars game in full. Let me just see where we're at. We got 11 people watching. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you guys can make sure, I'm going to just make sure I'm not missing all the other chats. There we go. If you guys can make sure to hit the like button, that'd be greatly appreciated. Subscribe if you're new, and hit the notification bell as well. That'd be great. Next, we got to talk about Zack Martin's new deal. So Zack Martin, the Cowboys, they came together, I think it was on the 14th. Yeah, the 14th. They came together. They reworked the whole new contract. He's paid. He's back. But what's interesting is this isn't like an extension. This isn't a situation to where it's like, any craziness with the contract. They just gave him more money. They just restructured his contract to give him a bigger pay deal. And so the cap hit for the Cowboys, it's $11 million this year now, and then it's $23 million in 2024. So what's interesting about this is, like, we don't know where Zack Martin... Like, I personally feel like this is where we're at. I think if the Cowboys win a championship either this season or next season, he's retiring. I think that that's kind of where we're at. I don't know if he's going to sign an extension. I don't know if, like, that was the conversation point, is like, okay, we don't want to sign you to an extension because of reasons, but I don't know. Like, I don't know what's going on there. However, I do firmly believe that if the Cowboys want to, if Zack Martin wants to continue playing for the next 3 years, because he is 33, and I believe he'll be 34 this season. I could be wrong on the age. I know he turns a year older during the season. I think it's important for the Cowboys to get a deal done, because when you look at the cap hit, you're going to have a $23 million cap hit for Zack Martin. And listen, he deserves to get paid. I don't think anybody questions that. However, I think that the issue is that if Zack Martin isn't getting a new deal, does that mean he's retiring at the end of the contract? Like, for example, Tyron Smith is most likely going to retire after this season, regardless of how, if he plays all 16, he plays none, whatever the case. Maybe we win it all, we don't win, we don't even get to the postseason. And I think that, you know, Tyler Smith is going to be your left tackle moving forward, or Asim Richards, because I know they're playing Asim Richards at left tackle. I do think that you found your left tackle in Tyler Smith. That's great. What worries me, and now you have your right tackle and Terrence Steele for the foreseeable, let's just say 5 years, and then 5 years before we have any issues. Then you had to figure out, okay, are you going to pay Tyler Biadasz? If the Cowboys elected to pay Tyler Biadasz and Terrence Steele, now you need to figure out your guard positions long term. Like, I know that next year you'll have Zack Martin, he'll be there, he'll do his thing, but we don't know who's here after that, right? And I understand, Space, why are we talking about this instead of... Because we need to have these conversations. I think that TJ Bass is a guy that you can maybe try to see if you have something in him. Because I'm going to just be honest, and this is another conversation I missed with the preseason. That offensive line sucked. I mean, I'm pretty sure that scared the Cowboys into paying Zack Martin, but Josh Ball ain't it. He needs to go. I think Asim Richards has interesting traits at the left tackle position. I think that he can be something. TJ Bass, I'm shocked. Where he was. I thought he was gonna, go a little bit higher in the draft, but not drafted at all. Like, what the hell? I think the Cowboys have a couple guys on roster they can make do with, but what worries me is that they need, I think, to put a little bit more into the guard position, because we're just going to go back to square one. And again, I understand you're not going to have all pros on every part of the offensive line, but after this year, you're kind of screwed in a sense, because you need to figure out how that left side's going to look moving forward. So yeah, I think that that's interesting. Zack Martin gets his new contract, and we move forward now. We move forward now into the 2023 season. Now knowing how players are moving and operating, it's really full steam ahead to the regular season, assuming, knock on wood, no one gets hurt. So let's move into the final segment, and then we'll close this thing out. Stock up and stock down, okay? We're going to go through each of the position groups where I feel like, or if it's a push, like either the opinion hasn't changed. So starting with the quarterbacks, Dak Prescott, we haven't seen, we're good there. Cooper Rush, I think that's a push. I think that Will Grier, his stock has gone up. At the running back spot, just kind of looking at the whole, Deuce Vaughn, start buying as much stock as possible, because his is rising as just in an insane rate. I think that Rico Dowdle's stock has gone up a little bit. I think Malik Davis, his stock has gone down. And that's just where it's at. Hunter Lipke and Ronald Jones, I think his stock's starting to tank a little bit. And Hunter Lipke, it's kind of push. You move to your wide receiver talk. It's not going to be every wide receiver I'm going to mention here. I think that Turpin's stock has gone down a little bit. I think that for a guy in Jalen Tolbert, his stock has gone up. I think for a guy in JMC, his stock has gone a little bit down, but not at his own dismay or his own, like him being the problem. That's not what I'm saying. I think the reason why his stock has gone down is because the others around him performed well. I think Jalen Brooks, he's been a push. Simi Fehoko, he's been a push too. And I think that Dennis Houston, his stock has gone up a little bit too. You move to the tight end spot, I think Peyton Hendershot's stock has gone down. I think that for a guy like Luke Schoonmaker, that's a push. John Stevens Jr., his stock has gone up. So there's that. Moving over to the offensive line, I think everybody's stock is down. I would say minus TJ Bass. Yeah, so I think that's a pretty fair assessment. On the defensive line, Isaac Alacorn, the guy that came from the international program, his stock is down, unfortunately. I think that he won't make the team. I believe this was his last shot, and I feel bad because I felt like his best shot was at the offensive line. But yeah, that ain't it for him. I think that Mozzie has been solid for what we've been asking him. Again, a lot of people were bitching about him being a bust, and I'm like, wait a minute. You do understand why the Cowboys drafted him, right? But again, I think that Mozzie, he's a bit of a push, not stock up or down, because he's got some things to work on. But that's okay. Again, it's the first game. Isaiah Land, his stock has gone up, and I just think that right now, I think that you look at these other dudes as I'm looking at the list here, it's just really been solid all around. I think that Sam Williams is a guy that I would keep an eye out on moving forward because I'm waiting for his jump. Linebackers, I think DeMarvion Overshown's a high rising stock there. Everyone else is kind of a push. Defensive backs, I don't really, there really isn't a whole lot to say aside from, what's his name? Oh my God, I'm forgetting the guy that got the interception. I can't believe I'm blanking on him. Crap. I think it was Thomas. I think it was Awante Thomas. Duh. I think that he's the only one that had a high rise, but there was no negatives there. In the special teams department, I think that you can include Kevontae Turpin again. His stock's down. I think Brandon Aubrey, his stock has gone up a little bit. And that's just where it's at. I don't really have much to say else there. Zach, what's going on? I wondered, is your channel name a reference to Cowboy Bebop? It is. Juan, what's going on? DV is perfect. Let me take a look. I'm not. Oh yeah, Deuce Vaughn. Yeah, I think that if that's who you're referencing, I think that he was a perfect pick for the Cowboys in the 6th round. I know we don't have a whole lot of people watching here, but again, if you're watching on the replay, please make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and hit that notification bell as well. We got 17 people watching. Let's try to get those likes up. If you have any questions, feel free to populate the chat with them, and we'll go ahead and close this thing out within the next 5 minutes. And we'll call it a day. Let me see what's going on here. Just checking here. Okay, cool. So yeah, if you guys have any questions for me, please feel free to put them in the chat now, and we'll close the show out. I wasn't expecting it to go for super long, to say the least. And then I'll have a video coming out later tonight. Maybe, yeah. I'll see what's going on in Cowboy Land, see if I missed anything. But it might be talking about how John Stevens Jr. could possibly be a stolen, a steal for the Cowboys. Let me just see what's going on here. Space, we need a experience. I don't know what you're referencing. I'm sorry. So, because I'm back now, tomorrow, I'm actually shocked. So tomorrow the Cowboys will have a 10 p.m. CST or 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time game in Seattle. So I don't think I'm going to live stream that game because of how late it is, but I'll have a video. I'll be watching the game nonetheless. Let me take a look here. I'm just double checking to see if I missed anything. I'm also checking Twitter to see if there's any news stories up. I know there has been fights in camp, and, you know, it's good to see how chippy it's getting. Let's see. I think, you know, so I think Micah was hurt too, but like he's fine apparently. But let me just check the time. Well, guys, if there's no further questions, I'm going to go ahead and close this thing out. Again, I'm back. The likes are going to be important because the algorithm's probably going to be screwed up for me as I'm getting back into the swing of things. Trust me, videos are on the way, and we'll just move forward from there. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. All right, guys, have a good one. Goodbye.